Is Tyler Warren still a great fit for the Broncos even after they sign Evan Ingram? We're going to dig into what he is going to bring to the table if the Broncos find a way to get their hands on him.
Yeah.
First, though, we want to throw it to our friend Fran Duffy, All City's draft expert, to tell us more about what Tyler Warren brings to the table.
All right, let's take a look at one of the most fun players to watch in this draft class. That's Penn State tight end Tyler Warren, 6'5.5", 256 pounds. Won the John Mackey Award as the top tight end in college football. He's an All-American, All-Big Ten. He also was a finalist for the Paul Hornung Award as the most versatile player in college football. And why? Well, because look, he caught a lot of passes. He was the focal point of that Penn State pass game on their playoff run this past year. But he was used as a runner. They would get him on jet sweeps. They would put him in the backfield. They would put him at quarterback and have him throw passes. They would put him at quarterback and do tush pushes. They did all. This is a player that was used in a lot of different ways in that creative Penn State offense. Now it's about transitioning to the NFL. And I do think he's got a 3-down skill set in the league. He's a really fluid athlete that shows up after the catch. Really good yards after catch player. They want to find ways to get him the ball fast and let him work. To me, that's a superpower. That's a separating factor in his game, is what he can do with the ball in his hands. Not a lot of tight ends can do that level of damage that Tyler Warren can do. Also, his versatile skill set. I talked about it being moved around the formation, used a lot of different ways. That's all well and good. But he also has got the ability to put his hand in the dirt, attach to the line of scrimmage next to the tackle, and block a defensive end, block a linebacker. Is he one of the best blockers I've ever evaluated? No, but he does more than enough, and he's big enough to develop into a really plus blocker. And to me, that's what, if you're comparing him to Brock Bowers a year ago coming out of Georgia, he's not the dynamic pass catcher that Bowers was. Bowers was a special pass catcher. I think Warren is probably a tier below that, but I do think that Warren has the edge as a blocker, not just right now, but his upside down the road. So while he may not be George Kittle, I do think that he's got the ability to be a really, really quality 3-down presence in the league. I think that certainly presents a lot of value. When I look at it from a negative standpoint, coming into the season, consistently had issues with his hands. Drop rate was really, really high. That was something he corrected this year. He only had a handful of drops this year as the number one target in that Penn State offense. He cut that drop rate down to 2%. That was huge for him, but that's something that we want to make sure he stays vigilant with. Drops were an issue early in his career. Will that be the case moving forward? I do think he's a good athlete. I don't think he's a great athlete. Again, like Brock Bowers, the type of tight ends that we see go high in the draft. He's certainly not the explosive, versatile weapon that Kyle Pitts was, vertically down the seam and put that level of stress on defenders. I actually think Colston Loveland has a little bit more straight line juice than Tyler Warren has, at Penn State, staying in the Big Ten there. So I think when you're looking at it, he's not that top flight mismatch type of tight end. But again, this is a versatile player that can impact the game in a lot of different ways. Yards after catches there. His route running is solid. He can certainly get better in that aspect as well. So a lot to like with Tyler Warren. To me, looks like a player that can come in. I don't know if he'll be a full-fledged starter right away, but he certainly can impact the game as a pass catcher, a guy that you can game plan touches for and let him be a big part of your offense. What can he be in 3-4 years from now? To me, it looks like he could be one of the better tight ends in football. He's certainly a fun watch based off the 2024 film.
Shout out to Fran Duffy for the breakdown. And if you want more from Fran, he's breaking down every single player, top 250 or so, in our draft guide. So go to thednvr.com to go check that out. I'm Henry Chisholm. This is Andre Simone.
What's up?
And what do you think, Dre? Is Tyler Warren still a good fit for the Broncos?
Such a fascinating conversation. For starters, not a joker in the Sean Payton offense the way Evan Ingram is, but I would argue a joker nonetheless. And I'm so sorry if you're all tired of that word at this point, but impossible not to see the way Penn State used him. Flexed out wide as a big slot. In the backfield as an H-back, used on all the ways that Fran described on direct carries and stuff, throwing the ball out from center. Real Taysom Hill ability.
Yep.
Phenomenal size, 6'5", 256. And then, coming off a historic season, first in the Big Ten in receptions, ahead of Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Tez Johnson, Ty Felton, all those great wide receivers in the Big Ten Conference, and second only to Smith in receiving yards. But the fit with Evan Ingram. What
Yeah,
say
it's
you,
tricky.
Henry? He is an inline. He could be a true inline tight end.
And I think that's why I could still really get behind it, because here's the thing. Evan Ingram is on the field in passing situations. If you want to throw the ball, there's no reason not to have him out there. He's your mismatch. He's the guy linebackers can't cover him. Safety. You want to flex him out into the slot, and you got to keep him honest a little bit. There are a lot of times you still want a true tight end, even if you have Evan Ingram. There are going to be a lot of opportunities to get him on the field. And how often have we seen Sean Payton use two tight ends in the past?
Right.
It's over and over and over. And Tyler Warren fits those situations well. And the reason I'd be more concerned about other tight ends is because, well, when you use two tight ends, you're probably running the football. Running the football is your fastball. Your changeup is passing the ball out of it. He's a capable blocker. He maybe isn't a perfect blocker at this point, but who is generally coming out of college. Yeah. But you see the tools there. You could get him on the field in those situations. And then you could even put him on the field with Evan Ingram and provide a little bit different look. So I think that while this probably shouldn't be a priority, I totally see the fit.
Yeah, I mean, you can use two tight end formations, 12 personnel, and masquerade it as 11 personnel, three wide receivers, because Ingram essentially just becomes your big slot, right? Yep. So, and then Warren, who knows? You could have him take the snap. You could do a multitude of things.
There would be some of that.
That is where he opens up a lot of stuff. That's where he could give this offense a different identity as a bigger two tight end offense, and you could kind of bully teams. He himself can play bully ball.
Yep.
The two things that really stand out is his compete level when he's running with the ball in his hands after the catch, and his compete level going up to get those contested balls, those 50-50 balls. Bull in a china shop, bully ball type of player.
Yep.
And I think in Sean Payton's hands could be very, very, very intriguing. There's a lot of cases to be made for him. As Fran mentions, the high-end athleticism of some of the elite tight end prospects we've seen in recent years, Ingram included.
Yep.
Kyle Pitts,
Yep.
Brock Bowers. He's not that level of athlete.
But you substitute it with, he might be a little bit bigger than those guys. Certainly weight-wise, he is bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's a level of physicality that, it is a tight end. And sometimes with tight end, you could sacrifice a little bit of speed for a little bit of power.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. What's interesting about him is he's got a really high floor. He checks off all these boxes.
Yep.
He feels really safe. But then in the Broncos context, how high is the ceiling for him? How high could Sean Payton maximize his skills and turn him into like a true difference maker, mismatch superstar?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question is, we had Brian Baldinger on our show. This would have been right, I think during the college football playoff. It was when people had kind of caught on. I think it's important to remember that this was kind of the big takeoff year for Tyler Warren. It wasn't like he was a guy who we were all expecting to be this top draft pick. It was probably the USC game in late October. All-timer-ish. That's when we realized, okay, this guy's a monster. And then he keeps that up all the way through the college football playoff. During there, we have Brian Baldinger on the show who says he reminds him a little bit of a Rob Gronkowski, which obviously is lofty praise. But when you look at a guy who's just that big, that strong, has that much contact balance after the catch and the ability to go high point the ball, like that's what you're hoping for. It's just so tough to project those guys translating to the elite level in the NFL.
Yeah.
And it feels like Tyler Warren is either your pretty standard above average solid tight end who maybe lucks into a couple like Tyler Conklin in some ways. Or you kind of hit this lottery and he actually is that like Rob Gronkowski. You just can't cover. He can jump over, you can catch the ball in front of you and break a tackle.
For me, it's hard not to see Jeremy Shockey, who of course was a Sean Payton pick back in the day. So, it's he's a fun one. I did think Fran made a really good point on the drops in 22 and 23, but he corrected that.
Yep.
I do think the hands are maybe more average than special, just in stretching out away from his frame. Don't expect
OBJ.
Yeah. Which, I mean, look, it's just
Gronk
tempering
had some of that.
expectations.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, what do you think the need really is and the likelihood of the Broncos pick? Fran has him 19th on the board.
Oh.
So value-wise, it's not like he's a guaranteed top 10 player, but
It's a tough question. I mean, so I like the way the Broncos tight end room is built out. You got Evan Ingram. You've got Adam Troutman as number 2, where he is one of the league's better number 2s. You've got, Nate Adkins, Lucas Kroll kind of competing for a spot there, along with Thomas Yasmin, the undrafted free agent last year. Like, I think you add an undrafted free agent, a late round pick, just to add a little competition. And I think it's a good room. Maybe my standards have been lowered by the Broncos, but I think that's a pretty good room. If
you add Warren, you're flipping that room on its head, though.
Exactly.
Like, it goes from one of the worst tight end rooms to one of the best with Warren Ingram.
Immediately. And Evan Ingram's on a 2-year deal. You save $6.5 million if you cut him after this year. You save $11.5 million if you trade him after this year, and so you might find a taker there. And I think that's kind of the X factor. I think that you probably want those two to overlap for 2 years and have like this super tight end room, but you would have the option to get out early if for some reason you thought we'd rather spend this money elsewhere. So I don't see it as a big need. I think defensive line, obviously running back, like you have like maybe a handful of those spots that are more. It's in part because of the positional value, but I could definitely get behind it.
It's an identity need more so than a positional need. And that's where the conversation gets interesting. I think they'll prioritize other stuff.
I think so too.
But it's interesting to think.
It is.
I also think he'll be gone before them.
I think so too. And I think there's no reason to trade up for him if you're the Broncos.
Yeah.
At this point. No Evan Ingram, it would be a different conversation. I'd still love to see him in Denver.
It's true.
That'll wrap this up, though. And make sure you stay tuned to the DNVR YouTube channel because we've got a whole bunch of these prospect breakdowns on the way, or maybe already posted by the time you're watching this. So check those out, and we'll see you there.